Ever been in one of those team meetings where your manager's just like showering everyone with praise?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, for work, that's kind of like not even that great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like every idea is brilliant.
Yeah.
Every presentation is like the best yet.
The best they've ever seen.
Yes. You've been there.
Oh, yeah.
All been
Absolutely.
there. So that's what we're diving into today.
Okay.
That whole phenomenon of Praisitis.
I like that Praisitis.
And we're looking at Suram's office epidemics to help us kind of unpack this.
Okay.
It's got all these great observations about what really goes on at the office.
Right.
The stuff that we don't always talk about.
Interesting.
And it's going to help us understand, like, why do managers do this?
Yeah.
It's more than just like a weird quirk that they have.
Yeah. What's so interesting about this whole thing is that we think of bad bosses, right?
Right.
We think of like the ones who are just on you all the time criticizing you. But office epidemics is like, hey, look at the opposite.
Overpraising can be just as bad for a team, for their morale, for how much they're getting done.
For sure. So to give us an example of what this looks like in action, office epidemics introduces us to this manager, Ashwin. And Ashwin is like the king of over-the-top praise.
Okay.
Even when it's like completely undeserved.
Got it.
So picture this. It's like Thursday morning. The team is meeting after this like crazy project that almost went off the rails.
Oh.
Ashwin walks in all smiles, booming voice.
Oh, boy.
Just like positivity radiating off of him.
Heck?
And he launches into this like praise fest. He's like, Priya, your data is amazing. But here's the thing. Her numbers almost like single-handedly derail the entire project.
Wow.
And then there's Ravi.
Okay.
Ravi's report had like inconsistencies, major ones.
Oh, no.
Ashwin calls it absolutely brilliant.
Oh.
And it's like, what is going on?
And this scene, I feel like it just really gets at the heart of Praisitis. Because it's not just about being nice, right? It's not about being positive.
It comes from a place of anxiety. I think a lot of leaders have this, where they don't know how to motivate people or criticize people. So they think by praising people, they're being supportive and encouraging.
Yeah.
But it backfiring.
It so backfires. Like they're trying to like drown everyone in compliments,
Right.
thinking that's going to somehow magically make everyone more motivated.
Right.
But it just ends up feeling so empty, so fake.
Yeah.
And what really struck me, and this is something that Office Epidemics digs into, is how much Praisitis hurts the very people it's supposed to be helping.
Oh, interesting.
Take Priya, for example.
Yeah.
She knows deep down her work wasn't good.
Right.
But Ashwin's like over-the-top praise.
Yeah.
It's like it prevents her from actually getting better.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't even know where to begin.
Right. It's like, how do you improve if everything you do is already perfect?
Exactly.
Right.
And that's a really important point that Office Epidemics makes. When praise is constant, when it's everywhere, when it's for everything, it loses all meaning.
It all sounds the same.
Exactly. And employees, they're left feeling confused.
Right.
They don't know what good even is anymore. And they start to question, like, do you actually mean that?
Is it real?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where you see the symptoms of Praisitis really start to show up.
Okay, so let's talk about those symptoms. Office Epidemics gives us 5 big ones.
All right.
And I bet everyone listening right now has experienced at least a couple of these.
Probably.
So first up, the obvious one, over the top, praise even for like mediocre or dare I say bad work.
Oh, yeah.
Like you get a standing ovation for remembering to put on pants that morning.
Exactly.
It loses all meaning.
Just noise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the flip side of that is you don't get any real feedback.
Right.
It's all just good job, amazing work.
Keep it up.
Yeah. And it's like, that helps no one.
It's true. You're just like wandering around in the dark.
It's like trying to read a map that's written in a language you don't understand.
I like that.
You don't know which way to go. And this lack of direction, it's like a ripple effect.
Right.
It impacts the whole team.
And that brings us to symptom number 3. A team that's just not engaged.
Yeah.
Office Epidemics talks about Ravi. He's like a total rock star. But he starts to check out.
Really?
Because it's like the book says, if everything is praised equally, how do you know when you've actually done something great?
It's so demotivating.
It really is. It's like, what's the point?
Why even try?
Exactly.
And like when you have these high performers like Ravi starting to feel like they're not even noticed,
Right.
it kind of sets the stage for that like final symptom that Office Epidemics talks about,
Yeah.
which is that performance across the board starts to suffer.
Makes sense.
It's like this weird paradox, right? Praisitis is trying to boost morale,
Yeah.
but it ends up creating this culture where, like, mediocrity is the norm.
It's like the opposite of what they're trying to do.
Totally. Because if no one knows what good actually looks like, why would anyone try to do more than the bare minimum?
Oh, exactly. That is the question, isn't it?
Right? So it's like, okay, we see the problem, we see how it plays out.
Yeah.
But, like, the million-dollar question is, why are these managers, like, why is Ashwin falling into this trap?
Why?
Seems so counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Like, you'd think a good leader would want to create this environment of, like, high performance, not just constant compliments.
You think so?
Right?
Yeah.
So what gives
Moving on.
what's the root cause here?
Well, Office Epidemics talks about a few reasons, actually.
Okay.
And one of the big ones, I think, is this fear of conflict.
Oh, interesting.
Like, leaders like Ashwin, they really don't like having to have those tough conversations about someone's work not being good enough or like having to give really direct feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of doing that,
Right.
they just avoid it completely.
Okay.
And they just lay on the praise, hoping that'll smooth things over.
Keep everyone happy.
Keep everyone happy, right?
But it's like a Band-Aid solution.
It is. It doesn't actually address the root of the problem.
Exactly.
Hmm.
What's interesting is that this fear of conflict, like Office Epidemics, talks about this. It often comes from this misunderstanding of what good feedback is supposed to be.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's not about being mean.
Yeah.
It's not about being overly critical.
Right.
It's about finding that balance
Right.
between recognizing what's working
Yeah,
and then also giving clear guidance on how to improve.
totally. And the good news is that Office Epidemics doesn't just tell us about the problem, right?
Yeah.
It gives us solutions.
Okay, good. Because I was going to say this is getting a little depressing.
Right.
We need some hope here.
Yes. So there's this 6-step cure for Praisitis.
Okay.
That's actually surprisingly simple.
Okay. I like simple.
Yes.
So how does our manager Ashwin, how does he use these steps?
Yeah, how does he escape?
Yeah, how does he escape Praisitis?
All right, so step 1 is all about awareness.
Okay.
Ashwin has to realize that his little habit here,
Right.
this isn't helping anyone,
Yeah.
least of all himself. He has to admit to himself, okay, what I'm doing is actually preventing my team from growing.
Like that classic intervention phrase.
Exactly.
You have to admit you have a problem.
The first step.
Right.
And then step 2 is where the magic happens. This is where the rubber meets the road.
Okay.
Specificity.
Specificity.
So instead of just saying these generic things like, amazing job,
Right.
or great work,
Which we all do.
which we all do, right?
It's so easy to fall into that trap.
It is. But he needs to focus on praising specific things that people have done.
Okay.
So, for example, instead of telling Priya, your data is amazing,
Right.
even though it wasn't,
Right.
he can say, Priya, I really loved how you visualized the data in your presentation. It made everything so much clearer.
Oh, that's good. Because it's tied to a specific thing. It's not just this vague.
Exactly. It's not just floating out there.
It feels more genuine.
Right. Because it is. It's coming from a real place.
Okay, I like it. What's next?
Okay, so step 3 is balance. So Office Epidemics reminds us that we don't want to go from one extreme to the other.
Right. Not just all criticism all the time.
Exactly. We don't want to make Ashwin into like a supervillain.
Right, exactly.
It's about finding that sweet spot where there's praise, but there's also some constructive criticism.
Okay.
So he could acknowledge that Priya's visualization was great,
Mm-hmm.
but then also maybe give her some tips on how to improve her analysis in the future.
It's about giving the full picture, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The good and the bad. Or I guess the good and the could be better.
Yeah, the areas for growth.
There we go.
Okay, areas for growth.
So how does this work with someone like Ravi, though?
Oh, that's a good question.
Who's like our star player, but who's feeling kind of overlooked?
Yeah, who's feeling a little neglected.
Yeah.
Well, imagine Ashwin taking Ravi aside after a meeting and saying, Ravi, I really appreciate how much effort you put into that report. Your research was really impressive.
But I did notice a couple of things in the data that we should probably talk through. Maybe we can find some time next week to go over it together.
It's amazing how even that little bit of specific feedback
Right.
can make someone feel so much more valued.
Yeah, it shows that you're paying attention.
Yeah.
That you see their effort.
And that you're invested in their growth.
Exactly. And that leads us very nicely to step 4. Honesty.
Honesty.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
despite our best efforts,
Mhm.
the work just isn't good enough.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's okay.
It happens.
It happens. And Office Epidemics makes this really interesting point that avoiding those tough conversations
Yeah.
where you have to tell someone that,
It's not good enough.
yeah, it's not good enough.
Yeah.
It actually hurts more in the long run.
It's like ripping off a Band-Aid.
It is. It's going to sting a little bit at first.
It's better to just get it over with.
So just get it over with. Right.
Oh.
Be direct, be upfront,
Okay.
but still be respectful.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of dancing around the issue, Ashwin needs to have an honest conversation with his team.
And say, like, look, guys, we need to step it up.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And he needs to create this culture where it's okay to not be perfect.
So make mistakes.
Exactly, because that's how we learn.
So it's less about blame and more about, like, how do we all get better from this?
Exactly. It's a learning opportunity.
Okay, I like it. So we've got honesty. We've got to be upfront. What's next?
Okay, so step 5 is all about shifting from this culture of constant praise to a culture of continuous improvement.
I like that.
So instead of just giving out gold stars for showing up, Ashwin needs to set high standards,
Okay.
but achievable standards.
Right. We don't want to be unreasonable.
Exactly. And he needs to encourage his team to always be striving for better.
So it's less about, like, checking boxes and more about, like, always pushing the boundaries a little bit.
Exactly. Always learning, always growing. And then finally, step 6.
Okay.
This is a good one. This is where we celebrate.
Okay. I like celebrations.
Me too. This is where we celebrate those genuine achievements.
Okay.
When someone goes above and beyond, when they really knock it out of the park,
Yeah.
that's when the praise comes out.
So it actually means something.
Exactly, because it's not happening all the time. It's special.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
And this actually brings up a really important point that Office Epidemics makes,
Okay.
which is that Praisitis, it's not just an individual problem.
Ooh. Interesting. Tell me more.
It can actually impact an entire organization.
Wow.
Because if everyone's getting a trophy just for participating,
Right.
it's like, where's the motivation to innovate, to take risks, to actually try new things?
Right. It becomes this culture of complacency.
Exactly.
Like, why bother?
Yeah.
I'm going to get praised anyway.
I'll just do the bare minimum.
Right. And Office Epidemics points out that this is hurting everyone in the long run.
It's hurting the company. It's hurting the employee.
It's holding everyone back.
So how do we actually, like, escape this, this Praisitis trap?
Yeah, how do we create a workplace where feedback actually means something?
Right. And where it's not just about, like, empty praise, but it's about actually helping people grow.
Yes. And thankfully, Office Epidemics gives us something really practical that we can use.
Okay.
It's called the GRACE framework.
GRACE framework. Okay.
We won't get into like all the details of it right now.
Okay.
But the main idea is to shift away from needing that constant pat on the back.
Okay.
And to cultivate something more powerful, the sense of accomplishment that comes from within.
Oh, I like that, because it's like you're not relying on other people to tell you you're doing a good job.
Exactly. It's like you know your own value.
Right.
So, for example, remember those colleagues we talked about?
The ones who always, like, praise me?
Yes, exactly. The ones who are always fishing for compliments.
Right.
The GRACE framework would encourage them to graciously accept compliments,
Okay.
but not to like fish for more.
So just say thank you and move on.
Exactly. Don't downplay it. Don't be like, oh, it was nothing.
Right.
Just own it. Own it. Okay.
And the E in GRACE stands for empathy.
Okay.
Which means we need to be thinking about the other people around us.
Right. Not just ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because when everyone's constantly seeking praise, it's like this competition.
It's like we're all fighting over scraps.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. And that creates this environment of scarcity.
Where there's never enough praise to go around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not healthy for anyone.
No. It just breeds resentment and competition.
Exactly. But the good news is we can break free from that
Okay, how?
by shifting our focus from external validation to internal satisfaction.
So like finding that sense of pride and accomplishment from within.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where true confidence comes from.
That makes me think of this quote from Office Epidemics.
Okay.
It says, confidence comes not from always being right, but from not feeling to be wrong.
Ooh, I like that one.
It's like this idea that it's okay to make mistakes
Right.
as long as we're learning from them,
Exactly. And it's about being open to feedback, even if it's not always positive.
because that's how we get better. Exactly. And that's how we create a workplace where everyone feels safe to take risks and to grow.
So as we wrap things up here,
Yeah.
we wanted to leave you with this one last thought from Office Epidemics.
Okay.
How can we all work together to build these work cultures where honest feedback is valued,
Yes.
where growth is encouraged,
Mm-hmm.
and where confidence comes from a place of genuine learning and improvement?
It's about creating a space where everyone feels supported and challenged at the same time.
Yes. And where we're not afraid to have those tough conversations.
Because ultimately, that's how we all get better.
This has been awesome. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Praisitis.
Yes, thank you. It's been a pleasure.